Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com.
Today's podcast is all about your one-liner, your elevator pitch. Do you have an elevator pitch? This is your host, Dan, and also Dennae.
Hello, and it's a Friday episode, so we thank you for tuning in, and we're excited to talk to you today about a one-liner, or as you said, an elevator pitch. And I think the term one-liner can be a little bit deceiving because it may not always be a one-liner, but the point is...
Depends on how long your line is.
True, exactly. It's like, how many words can you, or characters can you fit on a line of, computer text or whatever. Well, it depends on how big your font is and, lots of different things. But yes, your point is well taken. It may not be a one-liner, but the point being that it's a short, brief, to the point explanation of what you do, and it really to a potential customer. It's so important that it reach that potential customer.
Well, and I think the reason why the one-liner is important is because in our day and age, we are programmed to ignore and remove a lot of the noise. And I think ignore is probably a better word for it, because when somebody starts to go on this long dissertation about what they do, your screensaver kicks in.
I was just going to say, that's your famous saying, even to our kids who are, waxing on and on about something. It's like, hello, can you get to the point? And, I have very strong opinions about all the distraction that occurs. That's a whole nother episode, a completely other topic. But the point being, you are right. Our brains are programming themselves because of the endless amounts of fast-flying information that we're exposed to. Our brains are programming themselves to just ignore so much that we don't perceive as being directly related to us. And that's really the only way to survive. But if you're trying to market in this time period and with that kind of information flying around everywhere, you have to figure out how to make your information relevant and fast, because people do not have time and they won't have the attention to sit around and wait for you to get to the point.
Well, I think it goes without saying that, even when you're online, whenever you go to visit a website or you're searching for a product or a service, you have a very small amount of time. The research shows less than 10 seconds to grab someone's attention. I mean, you think about if you ever browsed on YouTube, they give you 5 seconds on an ad to grab that person's attention, for them to not click skip.
And if you're like me, you're sitting on that little corner waiting for it to come up that says you can skip the ad because you don't want to listen to it.
Yeah, and I understand why YouTube does it, because they have different types of ads. They have ones that you can't skip, but they limit those to 5 to 15 seconds because the attention span is lower. And so the ones that you have to skip are usually longer than that, and so they give the person who's watching it the opportunity to be engaged, and if they don't like it, to skip it, but they want. Some of those ads can be an hour and a half long.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. I was going to ask you, do you know how many times you've actually ever let an ad continue past the skip ad opportunity?
There's been a few times. Yeah. There's been a few times, and I haven't actually sat down, and went, why did I not click skip, I think for me, because of my background in marketing and things like that, I'm just sometimes curious as to how someone's going to pitch it. But I think the more authentic or organic the video is, the more engaged I am,
I can actually just think of one time that I've ever let an ad go beyond that skip. And I don't even remember what the ad was. So they didn't capitalize on that additional time that I gave them. But I'm not a big YouTube person. Like I don't sit around and watch a ton of YouTube videos either. So I might not be an accurate reflection of, the real percentages. But yeah, I mean, it's not very often that you sit there and let that go. So really they have, 5 seconds to connect with you. And I do remember that this particular ad, whatever it was, I thought, I've never heard of that. I might be able to use that. And I let it go on just to see what the name of the product was so that I could do some research later.
Well, and so when we're talking about the websites, you have like 10 seconds to be able to grab their attention. Otherwise, they jump off. And Google actually tracks that in their analytics, and they call it a bounce. So a bounce rate is somebody who searches for a product, they get landed on a website, and they don't stay there for more than, I think it's right around about 5 to 10 seconds, somewhere around there. If they bounce off within 5 to 10 seconds, it's considered a bounce, and it actually negatively affects you, because that means you were not able to capture that person's attention, or you are advertising for something that is the wrong audience, because they want to also provide quality content and quality searching, even quality ads to people who are searching for the proper product.
So in other words, the people that, use that search term, your product was not really a valid answer to what their search was. So Google their algorithm is not going to place you as high next time for a person who searches the same term.
Yes, that's correct. And so today we're going to talk about this elevator pitch like we've already been doing the last couple of minutes, but we're going to cover a good way for you to have an outline for your elevator pitch. So we're going to talk about 4 different things to make sure that you include in your elevator pitch, or your one-liner, if you will. I kind of like what you said earlier. Is about it's more of an elevator pitch, because it might be, a couple of lines, but it's something quick, but it has to include these 4 elements. And if you include these 4 elements in your elevator pitch, it will allow you to be able to grab somebody's attention and keep them engaged more than just rambling on and on and on like I'm doing right now.
And before we get into those 4 things, though, I do want to draw a connection to something that we talked about last week, which was the storytelling and telling the story for your brand, and remembering that even though you're organizing the most important information about your product or your service or your company, you're organizing it for the customer. And as we discussed last week, you have to make the customer the hero in the story. And so you still have to make the customer or the client or the listener, whoever you're trying to reach, you have to make them the center or the hero of that story. And I just told briefly a little bit of information about how, we like a good story. We are always looking for a hero in the story. But because we are all naturally egotistical, self-centered, and I don't mean those in a bad way, that's just how we are as humans. We all like to tell our own story. The same thing is true with the person you're trying to reach. They want to be the hero of that story. So you're organizing the information about your brand, the most important information about your brand, but you're organizing it in a way that allows the customer to be the center of that focus.
And that's actually the first one.
Right. So jumping off from there, then you have to know who the customer is. Who are you trying to reach? And it can't be everybody. That's not the right answer.
Right. Yeah. And the more, narrowed you can make your, elevator pitch, the better. And again, an elevator pitch is not just, one thing that encompasses your entire life. That's not really what an elevator pitch is. An elevator pitch is specific to when somebody asks you, what do you do? Now, that also depends on the setting. Right?
Right.
So if I'm actually at a entrepreneur event and somebody asks me, what do you do? Right? I'm going to tell them something different. Whereas if I'm at a multifamily investing conference, by the way, we do have one coming up next week.
Oh, that was convenient.
This one's being recorded the week of, I think, or actually the next
looking
week.
Forward to that.
We're probably in the process of, recouping from it, I guess, at this point. So, but anyway, so I digress. So if you're in a multifamily investing conference, a live conference, and somebody asks me, what do you do? I'm not going to go into this elevator pitch about how I have 5 non-surgical orthopedic medical clinics in South Carolina, yada, yada, yada. The pitch is totally different. So you have to have an elevator pitch, and depending on the environment and the atmosphere that you're in.
Point is, cater to the person that's listening to you.
Correct.
So you have to know who your customer is.
Again, know who your customer is. Now, obviously, if I'm at a multifamily investor conference and I have, I'm going out to dinner and I meet somebody that's an entrepreneur, my elevator pitch is still going to be a little bit different. It's all who is your customer, and having that pitch nailed down so that when that person asks you, what do you do? you can answer that and keep them engaged enough to want to continue to listen to you. Because even when you're going out and networking, that's one of the most important things that you can do is have that nailed down, because you can now connect with them. And if they're interested, they're going to want to connect, start to talk to you a little bit more.
And so then once you know your customer, then the most important thing about that customer is, what is the problem that they have that you, and specifically what's the problem that they have that you can assist with, but what are the problems that that particular customer faces?
Well, and that kind of goes along with knowing your customer too. So a lot of these are all connected, because if you don't know who your customer is and you have no clue what their problem is, and then it's very hard to create this elevator pitch because all of these things connect together. So let's just kind of go over all of these right now.
I feel like we might need another podcast for this. Here.
Right. I mean, this is a lot of good. This is good stuff. So first, obviously you got to know your customer, and if you know your customer, number two, the second thing you got to have in it is you have to know your customer well enough to know their problem. And then you have to know your customer well enough to know their problem so that you can figure out a plan to be able to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. And then that problem also has to, once you've solved it and they've overcome that problem, you got to figure out what that success looks like. So being able to describe to that customer exactly who they are, what their problem is, putting a plan into place to solve that problem, and then to also allow them to understand what that success of solving that problem looks like.
Right. And I think it's important that we stop and think about the problem a little bit more, because those problems, they can be multi-dimensional, right? So there is typically an external problem that your customer is trying to solve, right? I mean, it's something that causes them an issue,
but the pain is deeper.
Exactly. That's where I was going. The internal angst or pain or anxiety or worry or whatever you want to call it is internal. And it's always caused by an external problem. So you have to know what the external problem is, because that's what you have to solve. But you also have to understand the internal problems. And they have to feel like you understand that, or you connect with that, or you get that. And then sometimes there's also, a deeper even problem that I guess you might call it a philosophical problem or a why question that sometimes you have to be able to answer as well. And I've seen, you do this in our marketing. Most of our listeners know that, we have medical clinics in South Carolina, and we want to solve our patients' physical problems. But so many times it's not about the physical. I mean, it is, but it's not. We treat a lot of older people who can't do what they used to be able to do, who can't enjoy time with their grandchildren because of the physical pains that they have. And so it's not just about solving that physical, it's about getting them back to what they really want to be doing. And I guess that leads, into the 3 and 4, like what does success look like and how are you going to get them there?
So I want to dive in a little bit deeper about the pain topic, because I think that is probably one of the most misunderstood and mistreated ways of, making sure that you can solve their problem. Because once you understand, like you said, that pain behind the problem, that's when you can start to create the solution. And that's when you can start to connect with them and have them understand how they're going to be able to remove that pain. Mm-hmm. We live in a society where we are all walking around living with pain. And we're not just talking about, I broke my leg and I have pain. We're talking about emotional pain as well, and stuff that we don't talk about. And I'm going to give you an example of a patient story. And in this patient story, it'll get you to understand how to think about your own customer in a way where you can actually understand why they are actually doing business with you. And so there was a patient that came into the office, and when they came into the office, they had some low back pain. I'm just going to give you an example. This is just going to give you some hypothetical stuff here. They came into the office with some low back pain. When they came into the office, they were, in an extreme amount of pain. We came into the room, did an evaluation on them, did their vitals and all this kind of stuff, did some x-rays. But they weren't really in the office because of their back pain. That's what brought them there. But the reason why they were in the office, you won't know about until you start to talk to your customer about really what is that problem. And you have to ask the right questions. So the questions that we ask are, why do you have back pain? And they say, well, I don't really know. That's why I'm here, right? And then we say, okay, well, why are you here to solve your back pain? Are you trying to get back to working out? Are you trying to get back to playing with your kids? Whatever that case may be. And this patient was like, yeah, I want to, be able to work out again. But that's not really the pain. It wasn't that they're overweight and they want to lose weight and they want to get back to working out. The problem or the actual pain was even deeper than that. Well, why do you want to work out? Why do you want to lose weight? And you keep on peeling back the layers as to the whys behind everything. And it gets to the point of they start to tell you, like, the reason why I want to get back to working out is because I want to lose weight. And the reason why I want to lose weight is because I want my spouse to look at me again and be attracted to me.
I want to feel good.
I want to feel good enough, but I also want, in this particular situation or this particular patient scenario, the patient wanted their spouse to be attracted to them again so they can make love. Because they hadn't made love in years because she was overweight. So that's the deeper pain.
That was a pain. That was a hurt.
That's why they got all these layers down the road to the office to relieve their back pain or get rid of their back pain so that they can get to the point of being able to make love with their spouse again.
Right. But, it's interesting. And again, I might get on my soapbox here a little bit, but those kinds of questions and that kind of information is hard to get to when we're being flooded and we're so distracted by so many things. And you really have to take time, like I've seen you do before, and like I know other people do, to really ask the questions. But interestingly enough, when you do take the time to ask those questions, it also gives you a sense of mission about that. So you were not helping this hypothetical patient because you wanted to solve his or her back pain, right? You are helping that patient because you saw the pain and the need that they had on a deeper level, and it gives you a sense of mission and definitely satisfaction or fulfillment when you are able to help. That's what your one-liner is understanding all of that and being able to sum that up in a very, to-the-point presentation.
So what you should do is get out a piece of paper, and let me give you these 4 things to make sure that you include in your elevator pitch. Number 1, you have to know who your customer is, right? You got to make sure you write down and understand who they are. The second thing is understanding what their problem is. And then number 3 is creating some sort of solution or plan to be able to solve that problem that they have. And then explain to them a little bit about what success looks like. And again, these 4 steps in this process should be a little bit more lengthy. You should spend a little more time on this.
I was just going to say, you might be able to identify your potential customer fairly quickly, at least generally speaking, but you can't completely understand their problem just with one brainstorming session. You have to ask questions, you have to observe, and you have to really know the person that you're trying to reach. And, just occurred to me, because this is something that we've discussed as well, but this really goes for anyone who's trying to develop a relationship with anybody. You really have to know who you're talking to and what problems they're facing. This is for marketing, but this is also for, nonprofits who need to know who they're reaching. And this is for us as parents who are trying to reach our kids and help them understand, different principles of living. We have to understand our children and what their problems are and how we can reach them. And so these are just good things to be able to think through. But you're right, it definitely takes time and it takes some patience, which, ironically is what a lot of us either don't have or don't want to put into something like this. But that's what it takes if you really want to develop something that's worthwhile to use.
Well, and a good book to be able to read along this topic as well as just the general idea of storytelling is a book by Donald Miller called Building a Story Brand. And inside of it, he gives some more examples and various things like that. And, I'm going to read one example for you out of this book so you can kind of hear a little bit about how this would work. So this is from a CEO of an international private jet rental company. So number 1, his customer is wealthy and busy travelers. Number 2, the problem, flying standard airlines is a pain, but owning a private jet is prohibitively expensive. Number 3, the plan, easy to book and relatively affordable private jets that will fly anywhere at any time. And number 4, the success, the feeling of limitless luxury and privacy while flying hassle-free. So that was his 4 things that he wrote down along each one of those things, and he was able to craft his elevator pitch from that. So once you have that, you want to condense it down and make it more succinct. Once you've had a little more detail on each one of those different areas, but to create that perfect, I don't know if it's ever going to be perfect, but that more effective elevator pitch as you move forward.
Yeah, I think it's something that you're constantly tweaking, because as you deal with your clientele and your patients or your customers or whoever they might be more and more, then you're going to be constantly finding out more about them. And so as you do, then you can tweak that and change that as necessary. But yeah, it's something that you have to be able to start with and then have to be willing to revisit, occasionally to perfect.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs podcast. You can subscribe and also leave us a review. Let us know what you think about it. If you have questions or comments that you want to send to us, you can do it on our Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/toughdecisionshow, or you can go to toughdecisions.net and contact us there through our website. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.